Okay, so back with our guests. I had the pleasure to introduce Armelle Levieux, who is the manager of innovation at Air Liquide, Frédéric Duval, who is used of our economic summits in Toulouse and Paris. I could see that we have Benoit Lemaignan with us. Can we hear him just for a short moment? So you wanted to be with me. He is busy visiting Verkor today, if I'm right, in the Rhône-Alpes region. And to introduce this roundtable, Marc Ivaldi, who is an economist, teaches economy at TSC. He teaches at the EDES. And Marc is an economist who is fully familiar with this particular topic. We have a lot of discussions. And he told me, well, Vincent, the topic of mobility is not what you think it is. But I'll leave it to you. I will tell you what the true issue with mobility is all about, and then we can start the discussion. Thank you, Vincent. Well, good afternoon to you all. I'm not sure that I'm a specialist on this topic, but as you said, the transport industry or sector has emits a lot of CO2, but more importantly, it's the only industry where the emissions have not decreased. If we were given the factor of 100, now the sector of 10 would be 125, and the other industry, the rest of the industry, would be 65, to give you a reference. It doesn't mean that there was no innovation at all. Private cars, new cars, emit far less CO2, 42% less in 2022 compared with 1998. How come there's been such an increase of CO2 emissions? Why is it? Well, just because mobility is increasing all the time. We like to move around, whether sudden moves or something we plan for. But we do. The fact is that we do move a lot. And the main reason why there's so much moving around, because the cost of transport has gone down. This is a general observation. It's far more complicated than that, but remember this and take it for a fact. So how can we possibly decrease carbon emissions in this situation? Either you try to change the way people live and behave, or improving technology. Someone said that cars have far more sophisticated and made progress in terms of saving. I suppose my colleagues around the table will refer to other breakthroughs or improvements. Some people like it's far easier to change technologies than change behaviors. I tend to think that it's by changing behavior we'll be able to change technologies, and this will be the line of my reasoning. Being an economist, why is it better to change in technologies than trying to impose new behaviors? Now, let's look at the way people behave. That is, they could be less mobile, and I've used the buzzword here, sobriety. So on a provocative note, I'd like to refer to three types of sobriety. First type of sobriety, which is called spontaneous sobriety. One example, every year, you take the plane to travel to the Seychelles. Oh, really? 4 times? Are you going to travel to Seychelles 4 times next year? No, no, that was just an example. And when Mr. Jankovic, he tells you, if you wanted to achieve carbon neutrality by this or that date, you should travel only 4 times in your whole life. It comes as a shock to you, and then you decided to visit the Seychelles in 3 times instead of 4, and the fourth one will be spent at home. So this type of sobriety is something that you can learn. I mean, you could improve the way you drive. The one you can decide to go to the station only 3 times instead of 4, but it's not going to take you very far in terms of progress, improving your behavior. Especially, suppose that working from home is not possible. Unless this is the case, you have to go to the office every single day. How can you travel or move around less? In other words, spontaneous mobility or sobriety is rather limited in its scope. Now, you do intend to cut down on your CO2 emissions, and you are caught in disastrous traffic snarls every morning, every evening. And even if you travel in an e-vehicle, you're ready to pay 100 times more the price than you paid to cut down on CO2 because you don't want to waste your time in traffic jams or snarls. And this is a very important part of the reasoning. So let's try other types of sobriety. I'm going to be frank. I'd like to refer to what we call imposed sobriety. Well, the example I'm going to give you are not, in fact, bad examples. But if one uses policies or shift politics without really taking it on board, you block some parts of the city are closed to car traffic. It can be a waste of time because you don't know how to bypass these areas which are blocked. You can't really park your car outside of downtown. So it's not really efficient, as the mayor of Toulouse referred to it, the défi. You're not entitled, you cannot go into the downtown because your car is too old and therefore pollutes far too much. The concept is good. You might eventually lower the CO2 level, but all of a sudden you realize that if we were to apply it starting January 30 this year, 35% of the car drivers in Toulouse would be impacted by this. Many of them are not that worthy. It means that we have to switch to another car. So they say, okay, that's not the right way to go about it. And these areas, ZFEs, and the last one, which is not a good idea, the one that Mr. Maire Moudin referred to, it's both a good and a bad idea. You tend to think that just using one mode of transport, we love traveling by train in France. Okay, we'll have more trains running, and thereby CO2 emissions are bound to go down. So the concept is, look what happens in the greater Paris. Let's do the same thing in all large cities. There's bound to be inequalities. It's not fair. Why do you do this in the large cities and those that are just below the line, just slightly smaller? It's bound to be unfair for smaller cities. a few figures. Greater Paris is 7 million inhabitants, 800 square kilometers. Lyons is 1.4 million inhabitants and 900 square kilometers. So clearly the difference in terms of density is such that the mode or the concept having an RER, a fast train, is not the best solution. Doesn't mean that you want to adapt it, go for that solution, adapt it, but you can't really go for that solution as it wouldn't work. What else? Free transport. A colleague of mine said it works. No, it doesn't work. All studies so far tend to show that the 49 euro pass in Germany has not changed anything in the way people travel. Very little was changed. I'm about to conclude, by the way. You'll have ample opportunity to go back because so far you've discussed behaviors. Yeah, I'd like to move on and add one other idea, which is another type of a sobriety, which is an incitement, so economic sobriety. What about explaining to us what it's all about a bit later in the day? You've probably described behaviors as well as technology. Why don't we switch to technology and then you'll tell us what you think about it? But I'd like to use Benoit Lemagnan's image. I need the assistance of the technical people here. I said that the founder of Verkor, which is the second giga factory in the Dunkirk area. Maybe you've missed it when you read Challenge. You see one in the future, the next unicorn in Verkor has benefited from the 2 billion euros last autumn. So back to technology and economy. When it comes to batteries, there's a very sharp decline in prices or costs. And it's seen that this solution is indeed competitive. It doesn't solve the problem of traffic jams and snarls. But I wanted to state it because it's quite impressive. Thank you very much. Indeed, Verkor is a manufacturer of batteries. So you need to combine the behaviors and technology, as Marc had said. So our position is as follows. We have to make e-vehicles readily available so that transport emissions will be cut by 90%. Of course, it's slightly higher, more expensive when you buy it than the total cost for by kilometer is much lower with electric vehicles compared with thermal vehicles. And this is bound to further improve because manufacturers will offer or supply different types of batteries so that you can really pick and choose according to the type of vehicle. Diesel, big engines, small engines, and this will be the same with batteries. Now, coming to behaviors. E-cars or vehicles can be substituted for thermal, but there are a few differences. Interesting because it allows for a gradual change of behaviors. Autonomy is different, so you have to anticipate more, but you can travel long distances with an electric vehicle. Why is it that we decided to go for that policy at Verkor? Because we want to continue making this type of transport vehicle part of our new economy, creating new types of jobs, and also to go for strategic autonomy that is having a good mastery of value chain. All to the recycling as we are creating a circular virtuous economy. So indeed, we had to raise money. These are expensive types of industries, and the plant is being built in the Dunkirk area. If you use the motorway, you'll be able to see that this factory is being built gradually but surely on a daily basis. So I answer your question. You correct me if I'm wrong. The cost of batteries has been divided by 10 in 10 years. And now I'm turning to Armelle Levieux on what can be expected from hydrogen. Now, this is a very different order of magnitude in terms of cost decrease. What are the possibilities offered by hydrogen? What can it do and what can't it do? Well, good afternoon to all.
Niveau de maturité avec l'hydrogène qu'avec les batteries.
So the level of maturity is not the same. Let's get started by summarizing the uses as we see them at Air Liquide. Hydrogen is one of the solutions in terms of transition, but is not the single solution. By 2050, it should account for approximately 20% of the overall energy mix for three different types of uses to decarbonize the industry at a time when most of the resources are what we would call fossil fuels, and then second use to be the kind of a buffer system, a buffer source of energy. And in order to link up with what has been said by the previous speakers, I would say that hydrogen is a matter of usage. What do I mean? It helps to have a lot of autonomy. You can drive 600 kilometers up to 1,000 miles, as demonstrated in terms of autonomy. This corresponds quite well with what we are used to with diesel. And hydrogen will be mandatory in terms of mobility, especially for trucks and lorries. Using batteries on heavy transport, trucks, lorries, is going to be very difficult. And let's not forget that you will have to allow time for refueling your batteries, so to speak. And that's why we are convinced that hydrogen is going to be able to take over to some extent. I'll be able to discuss this later on. And there'll be potential usage for what we call intensive fleets with a quick, easy reload, top-ups. That could be the case for taxi drivers, taxi cars, cabs, etc. Well, when it comes to private cars, individual cars, I'm more skeptical. You said a magic word, that is logistics of the last mile. When you have far-reaching decarbonization projects, you often have to face this last mile issue problem. And so what would you say? Is it working? Yes. Good afternoon. Thanks very much for giving me the floor. Well, it's difficult to say. It's both a matter of technology and behavior. And to some extent, these two aspects are really closely interrelated. And it's probably a combination of the two. And using hydrogen can be very good for the environment. And well, let me just say that if you have 20 people in a single vehicle, it's common transport, means of transport, and it costs less than having 20 individual cars on the roads. That's obvious. And let's take the example of the postman who brings you the letters or parcels, and who uses bicycle in the countryside, perhaps, but most of the time a car. Of course, is very efficient, and it's the same with the e-commerce. Goods, commodities are brought home, and you don't have to go and collect them to pick up point or any other place, post office, etc. And several entities, research institutes, such as French Agency for Ecological Transition and university institutes are addressing this point and are conducting research on this. And going back to the last mile theory, we know that it is one of the points we do address, and we do invest a lot, hugely, in order to make this last mile delivery kind of technology free, especially in densely populated areas. The postman is already doing it quite nicely, smoothly, and it applies to letters. It could apply to parcels. But what about hydrogen? Hydrogen is more relevant for large warehouses, isn't it? When looking at our supply chain, I can say we have got products coming from China, India, Far East, and sea transport from those areas to Europe is followed by transport solutions which are more virtuous, such as the use of methanol. And we also use electric fleets more than hydrogen fleets. We do not discard hydrogen, but these days we already have 30 trucks which are electric driven, and once the parcels, products are sent, dispatched, the last mile delivery is being more and more electrified, in between inverted commas. We do invest approximately 250 million euros at the moment to go in this direction. And I could tell you that in Paris, more than 2/3 of deliveries are achieved at zero emission. And in 20 large cities, 80-90% deliveries are achieved at zero emission. I hope Toulouse is part of these cities. That would testify to the huge interest of the city for these new technologies. Bruno, when you hear that in terms of usage cost, the electric car is more valuable and more affordable than the current petrol or gas cars, how do you react? I have nothing against new technologies, and as a researcher, I'm convinced that we have to go on investing. We are not sure about in what direction, which directions, but we have to contemplate all the opportunities, but being aware of the limitations. And we have to know of these limitations when it comes to hydrogen. Hydrogen may be reasonable, sensible for big trucks, what we say heavy transport, but it won't be of much use on the roads by cars on the roads. I have nothing against electric cars, nothing at all, of course, but the efficacy of or performance of hydrogen can still be questioned. And I have nothing against hydrogen as such, and but it won't be of use for all transport. And may I add several points. During one of the latest during the latest electoral campaign, this problem has been kind of brought up. The price of batteries may become an issue, although we are all aware that we have to be we have to be aware of the fact that we have to become independent from foreign countries, from other countries. Let's imagine that the whole car fleet is 100% electric. What's going to happen when July holidaymakers do cross August holidaymakers on the motorways? Eight super nuclear power stations would be necessary to supply the necessary power to load the batteries of all the cars, and you have to be aware of this. We have to take this on board, and no one even alludes to who is going to pay. So it's not very easy, to encourage these moves, shifts to these new technologies. We're not going to tell elderly people, instead of using a common transport in the evening at 6 p.m. peak time in France, do use it at 0 o'clock in the afternoon, which is a slack time. You can't say this to retired people, pensioners. And Mr. Moudeng, the mayor of Toulouse, asked for fund, turned to businesses, companies for funding. He didn't turn to users, and I think we are very far from having optimized transport schemes, with especially commodities transport, which would help. Amazon has got an optimized transport setup, but it's not the case of all companies. And in order to organize decarbonized or decarbonated commodities transport, you need an appropriate organization in terms of data sharing, of prices, etc. Thank you, Marc. I just wanted to ask Benoit to react, to share his view. We all keep in mind what Marc has just alluded to. Don't you think, by the way, that the fact that the electric cars slow down at the moment, or on the downswing at the moment, may be due to the fact that people are kind of concerned? Why is this market at a halt at the moment? Several points, if I may. I would rather say that we have reached a stage, nearly a stage of maturity, and users do appreciate the comfort of electric cars, and once an electric car is adopted, you keep it, so to speak. And European car manufacturers are selling new electric cars, which will be quite valuable for the consumers, and they will probably sell readily on the European markets. And French media tend to say that the electric market is kind of receding or as a whole, but it's not the case. It's still increasing. And quite interestingly, you have to take several aspects into account. And for instance, the motorway operators had a look at what happened during the long May bank holidays in France around the 1st and 8th of May. And quite interestingly, they didn't note any traffic, any battery load jam on the motorway rest areas, etc. It did work very smoothly. You know that motorway, you know that people can be sensible. And I don't think that people refuse to go for electric cars for this type of reason. There are second-hand Zoe cars, which are very much favored in the countryside, because in the countryside in France, people drive less miles a day or a month. They are quite, and these cars, these Zoe-type cars, are very convenient for this use, and good price-quality ratio. So the changes in people's behavior may be marginal, may be little, maybe sound little, too small, but they sound little and small because there are huge problems in other respects. Well, we conduct a lot of research and write a lot of papers on this topic, but we are wondering whether in the future hydrogen, will become a kind of miracle solution. In fact, hydrogen is not, well, there is no problem of availability with hydrogen. We have got the right technologies. There is rather an issue of with the infrastructures. Anyway, when it comes to production, hydrogen is produced by transformation of natural gas, and thus obtaining what we call the blue hydrogen. It decarbonizes up to 95%. It's readily available, and we already have CO2 sensors on some of our premises, in some of our factories, and it's working. Then we have got another type of production thanks to hydrolysis, but you need a lot of renewables to produce this type of hydrogen through the electrolytic, thanks to an electrolytic process, and there is a kind of bottleneck still. But we have got the right technologies, that's for sure. Next point, that's logistics, the sector of logistics. So buying a car, all too well, electric car, all too well, but if you don't have the opportunity to load your battery, what's going to happen? Question mark. At Total Energy, we did set up a joint venture named TEAL, which consists in having 100 loading point for hydrogen in Europe. Lorry and truck manufacturers are working on the hydrogen fleet, and we have to convince the hydrogen fleet operators have to be convinced, and we have to work together with public authorities to work out the cost issue. It's, let's say, in the pipeline, between inverted commas. I mean, the product chain is in the pipeline. Now, concerning Amazon, don't you think you should opt more for slow delivery than opt for ultra quick, super quick delivery? Well, thanks very much for bringing up this issue, which is part of our main concern these days. First and foremost, I would like to explain that in a company like ours, like our company, CO2 emission is mainly due to logistics optimization. The more economical, the more optimized delivery is, the less we spend, and the less we spend, the less CO2 you emit. But, and there is a but, and the quicker we deliver, the less we do emit. Why is it so? Let me take the example of Paris. In Paris, until a few years ago, we had a distribution center located outside Paris. We had our product there, and we were delivering in a matter of 1 or 2 days, no longer. Vans were leaving the central warehouse. It was simple, but it was not very quick, and it was expensive. Then we decided to reach an agreement with bus companies, a place to kind of hire a place where coaches or buses are stored overnight. So our lorries, our trucks do reach these places, and from this kind of place, we do deliver the last mile. And we succeed in delivering in 1 day, because we have got these bus or coach company parking spaces, car parks, let's say, central car parks, which are useful for us as a kind of node from where the vans do leave to deliver the last mile. So it's complementary. It's a complementary solution. If your logistics on the reverse, if your logistics is not optimized, then you will spend more. But let me say that thanks to these warehouses we are borrowing from RATP, we optimize our delivery at a cheaper price. And it's quite interesting to note that warehouses can be used both during the day and during the night. Ecology, as such, lies in pooling and must rely on assets pooling. If you make the most of the warehouses during the day when they are not used by the bus or coach company, we can do a lot. And that could apply to many, many sectors. I just took this example. What do you mean? Well, what do you think, Marc? I didn't want to over-focus on technology, to focus too much on technology. We even have hydrogen-driven bikes. You can also produce your hydrogen at home. There are available technologies. There are many more. We can develop a hydrogen network, but we can also build induction motorways. It's being studied these days. This solution is being studied. What is an induction motorway? Well, a truck drives on the motorway, and the battery is being loaded, is just loaded when the lorry, the truck, or the car drives on the surface. Well, so even if you don't want to, even if I don't want to focus on the technology, I fully agree with the technological breakthrough. But this cannot be done without having all the partners getting organized together. If we don't have optimization models, if we do not devise optimization models, if we don't have appropriate governance, and let's not forget to invest in these technologies. I find totally unbelievable that in Paris you need a ticket to travel by tube. It sounds unbelievable. There is a lack of flexibility in all this, and related technology to do without a ticket, for instance. Well, makes me think of goods or commodities transport. Someone is asking, why do not we develop river transport? Water transport for heavy commodities. Well, some containers are being delivered but thanks to transport on the Garonne River, on the Seine River. And in the Netherlands, it's hydrogen transport.
Ne sait pas qu'aujourd'hui, il y a une entreprise qui s'appelle Aropa en France.
We have got a company named Aropa in France, both working in the Havre and other harbor, and which works on these issues, that is to say, carrying heavy goods, heavy products on the Seine down to Gennevilliers Harbor. And so it's a real concern. It's taken on board by French industrialists, would you believe me? And it's more taken on board than what you could assume. When people ask whether liquide is going to go for white hydrogen, you have perhaps to explain, madam. Well, white hydrogen is to be stored in the deep subsoil, and I think there are some ores or hydrogen ores or deposits in the southwest and in the east. Mr. Bayrous, Lord Mayor of Pau, has mentioned it on several occasions. But there is a single deposit, operational deposit in Mali, in Africa, delivering a few bottles, hydrogen bottles per day. So this is not at all what we do need and what we will need in the future. I'm talking here of white hydrogen, as the speaker says. And we have to be very clear in terms of concentration, purity. What about the depths of the deposits to be how deep are the deposits in a nutshell? And let's not forget the extraction time, which is quite long. Let me ask you a topical question. would you say that we have been seeing in the last few days during the European legislations? What is your opinion concerning the evolution of the Green Deal? Answer: as far as we are concerned, we are investing heavily in order to decarbonize our company. We are conducting 180 projects at European level on concerning renewables. We are installing several gigawatts of renewables, which accounts for half of the consumption in Belgium. And this is quite crucial, and this is quite valuable, and with one target, fully decarbonization by 2030. I do share the other speaker's opinion. Strategic autonomy seems to give rise to a kind of overall agreement among the political parties, but the French approach is not the European approach, and you have to take this on board, plus the fact that means and ways to achieve the objectives or the targets as set may differ. But I think what we do need is stability, and because the rest of the world is getting along meanwhile, so we do need a stable Europe. And may I interrupt you? Armelle and Marc must have their say. I am fully aligned with the previous two speakers at air liquid level. We have committed ourselves to reduce by 1/3 our emission, to reduce our emission by 1/3 by 2035. Most of our projects do deal with energy transition. We have invested 8 billion euros supposedly, and I was in Germany a few days ago, and I must say that the opinions differ totally other side of the Rhine River. Concerning, well, what about the Green Deal? There might not be major changes. There may be, well, I don't think there won't be any major changes. There may be minor adjustments in terms of financing, and bargaining of the carbon tax at borders, but the strategy has been largely discussed, accepted, so much so that all companies are really, businesses are committed to this Green Deal. So I don't see how this Green Deal, in between inverted commas, could be changed. As said this morning, this strategy can be costly. But setting an example is also quite essential, and it has a cost, of course. But it helps to illustrate the European power. Well, we have drawn a comparison between technology and behavior. Good topic for your future dinners or cocktail parties. Thank you.